Hi, this is Jill. Welcome to the Life After podcast, where we talk about moving from surviving to thriving. This podcast is for anyone who wants to learn, grow, to get tips and tricks about how to inspire you to become the person you want to be and get clarity about exactly what you want in life. This is also the place to be if you want to be lifted up and encouraged to go out and do great work in the world. What has happened in your past does not have to define who you are today or who you become in the future. And in fact, what has happened to you in the past should, can, and will shape who you want to be. This podcast is also about bringing people together. It's about connecting all of you, helping you identify where you are in your process. What do you need to feel more engaged and alive in your life, more connected to the people in your circle? This is a community of those who are looking to improve our world in the way that is most meaningful to them. Why is this important? Because how we show up really matters. Bringing more service, kindness, and love into the world is vital right now. Where there is anger, there is always pain underneath. Eckhart Tolle. Anger is a sign that something needs to change. Unknown. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Buddha. It's a lot easier to be angry at someone than it is to tell them you're hurt. Tom Gates. Tears of despair can be fuel. Thunders of anger can be light. Maxime Legace. Anger expressed in a healthy and positive way means that we channel emotional anger towards resolution, not attack. Byron R. Pulsifer. In this episode, we're going to talk about anger. I was not surprised to see that so many of the quotes I found were about how not to get angry, how not to express your anger, how to avoid anger, how to quell your anger, how to minimize it, and on and on. This is because so often we are taught that anger is bad. I'm here to tell you it absolutely isn't. No emotion or feeling is bad. When we ignore our emotions, any emotion, they can grow and can sometimes either get out of control or become our primary consistent emotion. That's generally not how we want to live, in a state where one emotion has taken over. However, every single emotion we feel has a purpose. And today we're going to talk about anger and why we don't need to be afraid of it. When we recognize it in our life, we should thank it for what it is. The realization that we need to act on a situation in our life that may not be working, or that we are feeling other emotions that are longing to be acknowledged, felt, and processed. We're talking about anger today because so many people don't. And we've never shied away from the hard stuff. We can do hard things, as Glennon Doyle says. People are so afraid of anger that they really don't realize that just like any other emotion, it's designed to help us. The problems arise when we ignore it, often because we're afraid of it. Anger has a role in our lives. It can serve as valuable fuel to power the vehicle of change. The problem is that for so many people, they think their anger will serve a purpose that it's meant to serve, rather, that it isn't meant to serve. Anger is just anger, and it doesn't invoke any change unless it is actually paired with purposeful, determined action. I grew up in a household where anger was a really commonly expressed emotion. And so two things happened. I became really comfortable with anger, and yet, even though I was comfortable with it, I was still afraid of it. Of course, I think that's a normal feeling to be afraid of anger when you're a kid. You don't understand it, you just feel it. And it feels big and scary and so often out of control. And as a kid, you don't know that anger masks other primary emotions. When you grow up in a household with a lot of anger, whether you want to or not, and in many cases, whether you even realize it or not, you learn to express a lot of your own feelings with an undercurrent of anger. Sometimes it's just an undercurrent, and sometimes it's a flood of anger. And because you don't realize that you've got that undercurrent of anger, a lot of the time, people around you may not tell you or express that they see or feel your anger. Instead, they just kind of shy away. Anger is a secondary emotion. The primary underlying emotions for anger are fear, loss, sadness, and shame. If you Google the underlying emotions for anger, there are other additional lists that you might come up with. One list shows the emotions as hurt, scared, rejected, humiliated, and frustrated. Another list shows the emotions, the underlying emotions, as afraid, attacked, offended, disrespected, forced, trapped, or pressured. Regardless of the list you choose, it's important to recognize that underlying emotions to anger exist. This is so vital to understand because when someone is angry, if you can see underneath that initial reaction, you can often not take the anger personally, and in some cases, even respond in a way that diffuses the anger and helps the other person manage their angry reaction. I know I found this next bit of information somewhere. However, I didn't write it down at the time I took the note, so I apologize that I can't cite it and give credit. The root causes of anger can stem from unresolved childhood trauma, repressed or unmet needs, unrealistic expectations, coping unhealthily with stress or anxiety, and experiences of neglect, abuse, or aggressive behavior. What I know for certain is that all of those things are true. Unresolved childhood trauma, which often leads to repressed or unmet needs, can definitely increase our feelings of anger. As a child, you feel powerless to the events happening to you. And often they are happening to you. And a child definitely feels the four underlying emotions of fear, loss, sadness, and shame. Especially when a child does not have help from an adult or adults to work through the traumatic event, those underlying issues can easily become the mask of anger. I have a note that I leave on my desk that says, expect nothing, appreciate everything. When we have unrealistic expectations that don't come to pass, we often feel disappointed. While that didn't make it on one of our earlier lists, it's a cousin to humiliated or frustrated and can lead to anger. Unhealthy coping strategies can definitely cause stress and anxiety, which can lead to fear, shame, scared, attacked, frustrated, even trapped or pressured, all of those feelings, which are underlying emotions to anger. While anger is an emotion that most people avoid, it is also one that oddly is more accepted in our culture than shame, fear, or scared. So it's natural that anger becomes a coping strategy for many. Finally, abuse and neglect, like traumatic events, causes anger. Sometimes it causes anger to look a little different, in my experience. Because you might feel angry, however, if you're actively in an abusive or neglectful situation, it's not safe to show your anger. So it often comes out in very different ways. Now, I'm not a therapist, can only give you anecdotal examples. Some people that are actively being abused will appear to need to have total control. It's one of the few ways they feel safe, and it's a way to suppress their feelings of anger. Another is that someone could appear to be totally submissive. They may be hiding their feelings of anger and the other underlying emotions in order to stay safe. Once they are no longer in the abusive or neglected relationship, their anger may kind of seep out of them, especially if they don't really know how to handle the anger or the other underlying emotions they're feeling. If you've had your autonomy taken away from you for a long time, it can take time to regain it. Anyone else ever lashed out when you were angry and then felt remorseful afterwards? Our emotions tell us where they live in our body when we're paying attention. Where does anger live in you? Where do you feel it when you're angry? Where do you feel it when you're just starting to get angry? It's important to know this because these initial feelings can give us clues and can help us slow down and breathe, allowing us to process those initial underlying feelings and help us manage our anger before we make a potential mistake by acting it out. Now, another reason why it's so important to know the underlying emotions of anger is because it allows you to understand your own anger. When you are angry, what is that underlying emotion? Are you really feeling fear? What is it that you're afraid of? I'm afraid of snakes. And every time someone tells me that I shouldn't be afraid of garter snakes because they're harmless, it makes me irritated, and I have to stop myself from making a snarky or rude comment. Who is it for someone else to determine the depth of my fear and tell me not to feel it? Is what you're really feeling loss? Are you going through a divorce and you're feeling the loss of a long relationship that has deeply impacted your life? And instead of really feeling that loss, you get angry at the checker at the grocery store for going too slowly? Are you sad? Is it an important date after the recent death of someone close to you and you are feeling deep sadness? Instead of connecting to that sadness, do you yell and honk your horn at the car in front of you when they don't move quickly enough at the green light? Brene Brown is the master of explaining shame. And it is such a core emotion for most of us that when we feel it can cause us to move into our negative stories and limiting beliefs, which instantaneously transforms us into a place of anger. This anger makes us defensive and often causes us and the people we love hurt. Obviously, my examples are simplified and kind of dumbed down in order not to elicit any additional upset or trauma. As humans, we feel fear, loss, sadness, and shame deeply and profoundly. And that leads not just to anger, but sometimes to rage or fury. The depth of pain of these feelings can cause damage, often unintentionally, to the people we love most, which in turn causes us more fear, loss, sadness, and shame, thereby intensifying our anger, especially if we aren't dealing with it. It can be a vicious cycle. So, what now? Now that we understand the underlying emotions and reasons for anger, how do we manage it? According to the American Psychological Association, there are three main approaches. Either express your anger in a healthy, assertive way, not aggressively. You can suppress your anger, again, in a positive way where you can convert your anger, i.e., like taking a positive action, or redirect it and focus on something positive. Or you can use calming techniques to calm down internally, like using breathing techniques, for example. For more details, please see the link to the article in the show notes. These are great tips. I would add that it's so important to tap into how you are really feeling and acknowledge those feelings. It's really hard to feel anger often. The anger is trying to tell you to do something differently, to change something that isn't working for you. When I was going through my divorce, I was angry a lot. And it was pretty clear to everyone but me. In hindsight, it just kind of seeped out of me constantly. And my ex attempted to use that anger against me again and again. At the time, I didn't know that anger was trying to get me to address all that underlying fear and loss and sadness and shame. I had it all. And one day, it just kind of hit me. We were at the therapist. Yes, I was going to court-ordered therapy with my ex-husband. This is a story for another day for sure. And I looked at her and said, "Everyone is so concerned that I'm angry. Would you like to know why?" And it changed everything. It was a total epiphany for me that there was so much more happening than this really surface emotion I was feeling. I think that was truly the start of healing for me. Don't be afraid of your anger. Let it tell you what's happening underneath. Let it help you take the action you need to change. And if, God forbid, you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, let it be the start of your healing. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode on anger. Remember, when you or someone you are interacting with is angry, there is an underlying emotion happening. Take the time to figure out what that is, and it will definitely help. I'm always here to help. Please reach out to me if you would like some additional support, would like me to come speak to your organization or school, or would like to be a guest on the show. There's a link in the show notes for how to reach me, or please visit my website at locatecoaching.com. I appreciate you sharing these episodes. This podcast is a powerful resource for anyone that is looking to make changes in their lives. So please, please, please help me grow by sharing, liking, and subscribing. There will be new episodes on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. I promise every episode I'm going to show up and help support you in your individual journey. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.